Shalom, family, Shaman Elijah. Thank you for joining me at Unsectarian Wisdom. And as usual, I'm a wise, wealthy, rich, celestial being that is loved by the Most High Creator. Let's go ahead and jump back in, family. We are getting back into chapter 22 of the Terra-Infinita, alright? And let's go ahead and read it. The giants of the Great Tartary, who wanted to liberate humanity. Alright. Alright, okay. So let's go ahead and jump in. Chapter 22, the giants of the Great Tartary who wanted to liberate humanity. The giant race joined the human race in the previous reset. They came from outside to free us from the vile custodial oppression. They believed it was the right time to unite and wait until some of the custodial masters returned. The Great Tartary, the one that was erased from its maps and history, was the perfect union of giants and humans. That is why the past of the giants, or the giant humans, was hidden forever, or simply their history was manipulated with tales full of lies mixed with mythology, and in many ways they were sentenced as enemies. They were sentenced as enemy of the gods. The truth is simple, and you will see it with your own eyes in the future. The only enemies of the gods, and of breaking the free development of the races, of uprooting and destroying the spiritual development, not only here in the known lands, but in many other lands, are without doubt the colonizers themselves, the enemy race that destroyed the dreams of the past, and will destroy those of your future if you let them. The giants only showed their greatness by staying hidden, so as not to generate more harm to the current human being. Since in the past everything has gone wrong, and for that you are paying a very high price. These lands that are the only ones you know for now have their oceans stained with ancestral blood, our blood, that tried to change everything, that were very close to achieve freedom forever. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and just keep going. Today, we're going to do chapter 23 now. It's the human giants and custodians, the Great War of the Last Reset. The Great War started so fast that there was not even time to understand what was happening. The custodians attacked the big cities, as they always do. They go directly to the central power to weaken everything from its core. The giants warned in their visit to the humans that the custodians had the plan to contaminate the air that was breathed here in this world surroundings. The giants warned in their visit to the humans that the custodians had the plan to contaminate the air that was breathed here in this world surroundings. It was already known about other continents beyond the dome, but not in great detail. Neither was it certainly known about the custodial greed and hostility. All this knowledge that we acquired with time and the help of the giants was largely drawn from the information the custodians had prior to the Great War. Another inferior race was in control of these lands, and this was used to develop all the potential we could reach in the shortest possible time. Incredibly organized plans were carried out. Everything worked like a great clock. The advance of the Great Tartary was not done overnight, but neither was it long in terms of time in these beautiful but terrible lands. The walls did not exist back then. The continents were different. Although they did not change by much, they manipulated their lands, their climate, their environment totally in the new beginning. They were never going to admit that they came close to losing their best colony, let alone in the hands of the giant barbarians, as they call them, and the humans they really detest. Sketch of ancient map depicting the known lands before the last reset. That's what it says sketch of ancient map depicting the known lands before the last reset. It's talking about this one right here in the corner that you see, family. Let me make it a little bit bigger for you. Alright, and that's the end of that chapter. Let's go ahead and do the next one. Chapter 24, the destruction of the great cities, the fall of an empire. The great cities were invaded by black smoke. The giants brought technology and taught the humans in Tartary. The level of technology that was used at that time had never reached the hands of humans. It was a difficult process, but they were achieving really great things. Just the Great War came by surprise. Although they expected it, they did not think it would come so fast. Then came the Great Flood and different attacks. There came a time when we knew that all was lost. The custodians were weakened, and those in power, the custodians were weakened, and those in power, the Greys who were their lackeys, could not cope with the power of the Anakim, the giants who helped the humans with their technology. There are several races of giants, and not all of them joined in this war. In fact, many of them split later because they did not agree to help. They saw it as a certain defeat. At that time, the hope of being able to defeat them was latent, and that filled the spirit of any person who lived on the soil. The feeling that generates to finally be free is priceless, and sometimes the dimension of what is taking place is not taken into account. That war was the cruelest that has happened here. It also brought with it a great retaliation and a reset and a different beginning. What is being carried out at this moment? The system that oppresses you and turns you into a robot with mere biological functions. The spiritual emptying, how your mind is controlled, which does not stop for a second to give you messages so that you cannot enjoy the present. All this is a product of that custodial fear of losing your best colony. Unfortunately, the ancestors carry that, and the giants too. For that and for many other reasons, different plans are being carried out to free you and end once and for all this macabre system under which you live. Many will ask, how is it that we can give all this valuable? And man, like I said, family, this is translated from Spanish, so many will ask, how is it that we can give all this valuable and at the same time dangerous information if it falls into the wrong hands? Oh, okay, no, that was me. That was my bad. Your answer is that we can give this kind of information because the majority simply will not believe it. And what we say here today will be forgotten by the majority tomorrow. It is like when someone has some kind of different experience with whatever race, or for example, the story about my father and the lands where I was born. But it is different if the government of this world, with all the mass broadcasting apparatus, tell a lie. For example, that the sky you see every day is pink. Then many will come out to repeat it, and even fight to death with anyone who says that the sky does not have that color. Even more, if important scientists who have graduated from distinguished universities come out to say that anyone who argues that the sky is pink will be labeled as ignorant forever and possibly affect him all his life, then you already have two things against you: the immense power of the world, of the great media that are controlled and that enter every home around the world, and also you have the word of confidence, in quotation marks, of the great scientists of the best universities that will give the necessary strength to submerge the majority to a lie that will be taken as absolute truth. Soon, nobody will even discuss about this subject for fear of being cataloged as ignorant. Some will not even want to look at the sky for fear that their own mind will tell them that it does not have the color that they say. A few others will fight against this lie without caring what they are told, or that they will be ostracized from many places, or they will not even be allowed to talk about this subject with a simple censorship. This is nothing new to you. Look around you right now. This is what is happening. If you do not do or say what they impose, or simply what the media reports, or what the distinguished expose, then you will be labeled as someone who is on the opposite side of progress, advancement, or development of humanity, with many quotation marks. Possibly you will be ridiculed, attacked, sidelined, branded as a traitor, or many other things. This is certainly unfair. The shadow-controlling parasites, who want total human degradation in conjunction with spiritual hollowing out, can label another with their great means of influence and coercion, and thereby destroy them completely. That is why we keep coming back to these lands, and will continue to be here, to fight against this dangerous conditioning they exert. Alright. Now we're gonna do 25, family. We're gonna call it quits after this one. So, chapter 25, the last reset in the known lands. The previous reset has been the cruelest of all, because they were close to losing control. It could not have been otherwise. It is even said that there were periods where humans and giants were controlling the situation. But once the four great centers fell, the millions of deaths left by the war, it was difficult to recover. We all knew at one point that we had been defeated. My mother has told me so many times this story, which in turn was told by her mother. I already repeat it by heart. She was only a newborn. Do you understand? They lived in a prosperous world, and suddenly all their dreams were trampled. Many found loved ones who had died next door. Their houses were on fire or had disappeared. They used technology that you would not understand. They could even petrify beings. They had already done it in the past. They had to see themselves in a really desperate situation. When all was lost, the great flood began. As it is known, I just want to throw something real quick, family. As I'm going through these and reading these, just some shows to that come to mind. Dr. Stone is an anime show. It talks about, as it's talking about petrification, it talks about how one day everyone in the world just got petrified. So that's pretty interesting when it comes to this. Also, the last War of the Worlds show that came out. Not the one on Apple TV, because that wasn't War of the Worlds. I think that was called Invasion. But there was not the one with Tom Cruise. There was a War of the Worlds movie that came out after the one with Tom Cruise. Well, there was two of them. There was this three. There was these two like Sci-Fi Channel cheap looking ones. And then there was another one that came out maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. And it was like the War of the Worlds that took it, and it's like War of the Worlds that took place like in the early 1900s or late 1800s. So that movie right now, and the reason I say that one, the specifically is it's the War of the Worlds. Is it, like I said, it's a TV show. I think it was BBC, and it came out a year or two ago. And this War of the Worlds takes place like in the late 1800s, early 1900s. The reason I say that is because that brings me back to the mud flood and what we're reading about right now. So if you haven't, family, if you haven't heard of it yet, if you haven't heard of Tartary, if you haven't heard of the Great Mud Flood, matter of fact, I did another video that's on my channel that I think I called it old maps, old historic maps, right? And on a lot of those maps, you'll see an old country in mostly in the area of Europe and Eurasia. There's an old country on the maps that they don't talk about, that we're not taught about in school, called Tartary or Tartaria. So like I said, Dr. Stone, War of the Worlds, BBC version that came out, like I said, last 2-3 years, and look up mud flood. And all three of these things right now are just kind of connecting dots for me and seeing how these could possibly be history. So just saying. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. I'm jump right back in. When all was lost, the great flood began. As it is known here, the mud flood. Oh, another thing, just real quick. Steampunk movies. Steampunk sounds a lot like this as well. So if you're into steampunk movies and stuff like that, that sounds a lot like the time of Tartaria or Tartary and things of that nature. So who knows? Maybe that's where steampunk came from. When all was lost, the great flood began. As it is known here, the mud flood. Oh, okay. When all was lost, the great flood began. As it is known here, the mud flood. In reality, this happened in different forms, but it dragged everything in its path. It was something of colossal dimensions. Many of the humans that grew up after the last reset used vestiges of these monuments or buildings. Even some had withstood the war and the flood quite well. They were resistant to ancestral technology. They were prepared for everything. That is why you will notice that many images of the past do not match the reality that people lived. The difference in technology and architecture, they mixed the history in such a way that it is difficult for you to understand it completely. But at least you will have an idea of how the whole process was taking place. The resets with some difference that existed, at least the ones I know of, are almost always carried out in the same way. They put a limit of years for the race they are controlling to develop and reach a point of knowledge and technology. They will always try to manipulate reality to reach that point as slow as possible. They take it really as a game. Basically, they will try to pause your spiritual growth and the truth about your origin and your world environment where you are. Clearly, they will never make themselves known, nor will they have any kind of contact with them, but you will be able to find them in history in several possible ways and forms. When a reset takes place, let's call it natural, considering that the previously established limit of years was reached, they will make everyone over 7 months of age die. This can also be decided in advance, or it will simply be thought of at that moment in meetings of the Parasite Dome. The flood that my parents, grandparents, and all that generation suffered was the same that would have happened in case we had reached the limit of years of development. Only that they initiated this in an urgent way because of the war that had been unleashed. The last reset in these lands did not reach the time limit that they had established for our development, but we were not far away either. If we consider that when the giants visited and joined us in these lands, they started to educate us about the lands and the life beyond the world environment. We started to learn too many things that they considered dangerous. Not to make this answer so long, your babies of 7 months or less than that will be left alive. Not all. They will decide depending on many factors. Those above that age will be killed or die in catastrophes of different kinds. This world environment is just manipulated in its entirety by them. Imagine you live inside a greenhouse. You can understand it that way. You can make it bloom or poison it from one day to the next, or even slowly. Alright, we're going to finish it there, family. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Figured I'd go a little bit further. But without further ado, family, thank you for joining me. As usual, I'm a blessed, righteous. Anyway, look, I messed it up this time. Look, forgive me. I be messing up my own stuff, man. Anyway, look, I read it. Be blessed.